Welcome to Planetary Health First, Mars Next. Well, this is an amazing day. We have some amazing entrepreneurs with some really great stories. We got a great venture capitalist. So we're going to be having some great conversations. To my, to my right, or however, it's Paul Johnson, ex-founder, CEO of Lemonade, 400 million exit, healthcare entrepreneur turned CEO and executive coach, advisor, mentor, investor, board director, passionate about the thing that we all love, myself as well, pickleball. All right. And we have an investor, a venture capital, Jerry Logan, right to my right, investment principal focused on all things mobility, energy, med tech. And we have Kevin Riddleberger. He's the co-founder of Dispatch Health, board member and advisor, entrepreneur and physician associate, driving healthcare innovation and accessibility. And then Dr. Ravi, MD, below to the right, founder and CEO of Daytona Health, serial digital healthcare entrepreneur and disruptor, board certified internal medicine physician, Scripps digital health scholar. So let's get started. Let's lay the groundwork. What makes a good venture capital or bad venture capitalist? Does anyone want to start with that one? I'll stop. I'll let you guys talk. Who wants to join and begin this?
I can jump in there. Oh, after you.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Paul.
Michael, would you like us to do a brief intro or just?
Please before, go ahead and do your 1 minute intro, each of you, please. Thank you.
Okay, so 1 minute intro on me. My name is Paul. I'm from the UK originally, and just over 10 years ago, I moved to San Francisco to set up a company called Lemonade Health. Lemonade Health was one of the first direct-to-consumer telehealth companies in the US, providing healthcare services based on product and technology at its core. We were fortunate to raise about $65 million from not just good VCs, but great VCs, including Health Velocity Capital, who I think was on your show a couple of episodes ago. I think Marty joined. We were lucky to help millions of patients get access to better quality, more affordable healthcare in the US. We launched back in the UK with Walgreens Boots Alliance. And when we sold, we had a team of about 200 amazing people. And as you said, we were fortunate to sell to 23andMe for a $400 million exit. I spent 2 years at 23andMe running in a couple of different roles, including running their consumer business, which was a $270 million P&L. And since leaving, I've been advising venture funds, healthcare startups, and I spend a lot of my time coaching first-time founder CEOs, and I love doing it. And I think in my experience, what makes a really good venture capitalist.
Can you hold on that? Let's introduce everyone
Sure.
real quick. So hold on that, and let's get Kevin. Introduce yourself.
And sorry for spelling my name wrong there. It was a speedy onboarding, so sorry about that. So it's Kevin Riddleberger. I'm the co-founder of Dispatch Health, which is a tech-enabled platform delivering high acuity care in people's homes. And over the course of the last 10 years, we've built really a system of care focused on high acuity intervention in the home. Removing folks from an expensive emergency department, helping transition patients safely from the hospital to the home, delivering hospital level care and SNF level care in the home, and providing last mile services in the imaging space, digital X-ray, as well as ultrasound in the home. So we've had, a great run over the last 10 years, served over 1 million patients, operated in 50 markets in 30 states, raised over 700 million from amazing VCs and strategics on our board, and looking forward to speaking with you all today.
Excellent. Next, Ravi, could you join us?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Good to see everybody and meet the ones I don't know. Ravi Kamadi-Reddy, internal medicine physician by training. Ended up somehow, luckily, in San Diego, where Eric Topol was one of his first hires at Scripps Translational Science Institute, doing kind of a research playing a research role with digital health, and also ended up co-founding, was chief medical officer of 2 startups. One called Lumiata, which was one of the early forays of machine learning and digital health. We ended up creating one of the largest graph databases that was kind of, some of that data was consumed by Google. So if you look up symptoms and Gemini gives you the wrong answer, I'm sure that's probably my fault at some level in your diagnoses. And then ended up founding a company called Reflection Health, which was one of the first motion tracked enabled digital physical therapy virtual solutions. So it was like, our thought was, if you're the one who, has tears an ACL, why would you have to drive to the hospital? Why couldn't we bring physical therapy to you with technology? Anyway, past that, did some work in the developing world, kind of bringing low cost digital health clinics and setting them up in Africa, and then work with NASA for a while on some other projects. Now working at Daytona Health. So right now, my focus isn't healthcare anymore. It's really health span. That's what we do. So we simplify the path to people's health, performance, longevity. And we do that through combining kind of both the precision medicine, personalized medicine piece with the precision lifestyle coaching, because most of health span is lifestyle, not just meds. It's just so hard to do it yourself. So we use kind of a combination of psychology and medical science to do that. So that's what I'm working on now.
Awesome. Thank you, Robbie. Jerry.
Thanks, Michael. The name's Jerry Logan. I'm a investment principal at a company called Natera Group. Natera Group is a Japanese-based tier 1 mobility supplier. I'm a part of the innovation arm. So we've got a venture lab and then also an investment program. We've got a $100 million CVC fund where we deploy capital into startups across the world. My background is within the mobility space. I spent about 15 years in various accounting and financial positions on the operations side of the business. Joined Natera Group about 2 years ago, where we're focused on med tech, climate tech, and also climate tech and mobility investments.
Excellent. Well, this is great. So we're going to go back to the first response to Paul. If you want to go ahead and take the microphone. And I think it sounds like you've had an amazing experience with VC. So I'm glad you're starting. Well, anyway, you go ahead and take it away, Paul.
Yeah, when I was thinking about what makes a great investor, I think a few things came to mind. The first I would say is just someone who's able to be a partner and supporter for you. And certainly my experience of running Lemonade for 8 years is that after an exit, we talk about it being this sort of beautiful, easy, linear path, and everything was planned out. But the reality, of course, was almost the opposite. And we're constantly having to navigate challenges, changes, issues, whether it's regulatory issues, whether it's go-to-market issues, whether it's product market fit challenges, partnership challenges. And I think really just investors who I know I can call and get some good advice and know that they're going to be supporting me are the investors that we were fortunate to have around our table at Lemonade. And I think, as I see it, VCs fit into two categories. There are the operators who become investors, and there are the investors who have exclusively an investing background. And what I found valuable was having a mix of the two as investors and board directors at Lemonade. And I think it's especially helpful because I know for more operational centric challenges, I can go to those investors who've had that operating experience. And for more of a sort of broader outlook, landscape, competitive dynamic, thinking about how do we fit within the landscape, I can go to the investors who really have that deep-rooted experience. And I think a good mix, maybe coupled with some strategic investors, gives you a really good supporting group.
Excellent. Does anyone want to respond?
I'd like to respond to that, Michael. Paul, I agree with you 100%. When I think about our team and the way that we work with entrepreneurs, you hit it right on the head. We've got a mix of investors with operational experience, such as myself, as well as investors who have just been in the investing space their whole careers. We're very strategic when we work with our startups. We're always open to help them. If any of them call me, I'm always picking up the phone. We regularly work together on projects to help brainstorm, and with a goal of specifically giving our portfolio companies an unfair advantage in the market. So I agree with you 100%. a good investor is going to be close to his startup and help him along the way.
Excellent. Any response?
Yeah, I mean, what?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ravi.
No, Kevin, please.
One thing that I would touch on, and I agree with everything that has been said, but to expand on things a little bit further is one of the keys, and really based on the stage, of the investment or when the VC is coming in, is not just where the hockey puck is currently, but are you aligned on where the hockey puck is going to be in the future? And being able to grow the business in synergy together as you start to skate towards, where that puck, is going, I think is key to be aligned, around, the future and the future direction, of the organization. Using, different analytical skills, being able to understand the industry itself that you operate in, and having true domain expertise that you can lean on each other with, and to be able to position the organization, for success, moving forward.
Anyone want to bring up any challenges that they've had? Not necessarily pick on venture capitalists, but just to offer some other light in this story.
I can speak to that. One of the challenge, digital health. I think all of us have been in the space, or in a similar space before it was called digital health, right? When it's wireless medicine, it's gone through different iterations. So we've all been here for a long time, and there's nothing in healthcare that I've seen as a startup in the startup world that happens in less than 5 years. And the real successful company, you're lucky, right? If you get an exit before 5 years in a digital health company, as you try to get the right team and the market's changing, you're trying to converge on product market fit. So it's like 10 years is normal, right? To be around before something takes off, and that's okay. And I'm always looking for, it's challenging to find the investors who are like, are you up for that? Like, are we thinking really big with a big idea? Let's go help 1 billion people. We'll change the landscape of healthcare, blah, blah, blah. But that's going to take a level of patience and risk that someone wants to take. And that's hard to find. I think that's been challenging. It's like someone's looking for the quick exit, quick meeting, 4 or 5 years in digital health. And I think that's really challenging to have that. It happens. But since we're all basically, in some sense, like us, for example, a tech-enabled service, that's more difficult as we try to find who those customers are initially and then expand those, what we're offering. So it's like, are you going to be here with me for that 8-year journey, right? Or do you want to be in it for that 8-year journey and see the big exit later? That's something I find challenging to find, but is worth finding. I'm sorry.
I think Robbie brings up a good point, that dating phase. Like, how do you go about that due diligence as a VC and founder to make sure that if you're going to, it's almost even more, like a marriage.
I can comment on that. I'd love to comment on that. So that's a great analogy as a dating phase and a marriage. And I think a lot of times you guys have all, taken women on dates here. You kind of get a sense of a feeling right away if you're a match. And that's how I've felt. There's a few companies I can think of, the first or second meeting we had, there was just this feeling of camaraderie. There was a feeling that we could get along and we could help one another. So I think sometimes you have this natural feeling about the startup, the people that are running the startup, and I think that helps to develop the relationship.
I have a question that I liked to ask prospective VCs, especially prospective board members, that I think gave me some insight as to how they might respond in certain circumstances. And that question was, imagine a world where I've made a really bad mistake and I messed up. What's the first thing you want me to do? And the sort of responses that I like to hear was, gosh, don't panic. Think things through and give me a call if you feel like you want to give me a call. I want to be there as a partner if you feel like you've made a mistake. And I made a lot of mistakes. And there were a couple of board members in particular that I always felt very comfortable just picking up the phone to and calling and saying, look, this has happened. I want your advice. And I knew that I wasn't going to be judged. I knew that they weren't going to make me feel like they were going to try and fire me. I knew that I would be made to feel like, gosh, we're in a partnership here together and we're just going to figure it out. And I was fortunate to have plenty of investors that I would put into that category. I think speaking to fellow entrepreneurs, that's not always the case. And sometimes entrepreneurs are not made to feel like that. And sometimes entrepreneurs actually fear calling their investors or board members if they've messed up. And I think that creates a really difficult dynamic and is not healthy for the investment or for the entrepreneur for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. One thing I would add is we often in the industry talk about the VCs doing diligence, on the startups and the founders. But I think it's just as important if you flip that. And so how, as a founder, how do you do your diligence on those VCs? And talking to different portfolio companies, being able to understand their track record, really dig into what their investment thesis has been over time. Does it align with you? Being able to meet the broader team, not just that individual that's leading the investment, but the broader team within that venture capital firm, I think is important. So taking that time, and sometimes it's you just want the money, but that's not going to really get you very far. You need to do spend the time and making sure you're bringing in the right folks to be able to make your company grow and be successful.
And maybe
if I could pose a question. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to pose a question on this and just want to get your guys' thoughts. One of the most dangerous logical fallacies that I've been susceptible to for sure, and is the sunk cost fallacy, right? Like when your company needs to make a pivot, or we find out that our ideal customers are actually asking for, or are different than we first started out with, or a piece of technology that we started out with is going to be obsolete in 2 years. We just found that out, for example. That example would be Reflection Health when we were using the Microsoft Kinect camera to do the motion tracking, which was consumer device. It was hooked onto the Xbox video game system, and no one ever really brought a consumer device like that to become an FDA cleared device. So several yelling matches later with the FDA, I'm sure you guys have had those. What those are like. It all worked out, but I knew there was this is going to have a finite lifespan, and we need to be a company that's better about using just motion tracking technology in general as we go forward. We don't want to be tied to this device. And I remember, investors were, whoa, Ravi, you said this thing would work. I'm like, no, it does work. I'm just trying to prepare us for this thing that's going to happen coming down the line. And I think that's just something I'm watching for now is if we have to do that pivot, I want to be able to pick up the phone and discuss this, or just figure out where are we as a company going to intersect with the future? I'm seeing these landmines that I don't want to step on. Can I pick up the phone and talk to you about that? What do you think? And not get stuck in that sunk cost. But we already spent, $10 million building this tech stack. And it's yep, but the world's changed, and now we have to, or it's going to change. It'd be cool to have investors that kind of get that, right? And that's something I would search for now.
And I think what I was going to say, for me, almost an elephant in the room when I'm helping entrepreneurs is this perhaps conflict between I need money and I want investors who are going to be helpful. And what does that mean, investors who are going to be helpful? And do you need investors who are going to be helpful? Because for me, almost more important than investors being helpful is investors being supportive. And I think that's a different thing. So there's this, I think as entrepreneurs, we're kind of trained to, you need to raise money, and then there's another financing round, you need to raise more money, you need to find investors who are more than just the money. But I would kind of caution, I don't think you need to find everything in an investor for them to be helpful. I think what I encourage entrepreneurs to do, who I help, is think about who are the right advisors to put around you. And those advisors don't need to be your investors. Those advisors could be people who are just operators and have had a full career operating. And then you can worry less about the investors being really helpful and helping you negotiate certain deals or introducing you to certain customers. But what you want to optimize for is investors who are going to be supportive, not helpful. And that's sometimes seen as a little bit controversial, particularly when I'm working with the VCs, who of course want to be helpful. But I would argue sometimes it's more beneficial to find investors who are supportive rather than helpful.
Yeah, and I would expand on that. I think it's a great point, Paul. And it's almost, when you're building your executive leadership team, you want to make sure that you're not building all from the same, DNA, but you're able to really develop the right team. You need to develop the right team relative to the board and your investors, and that could be individuals that are individual contributors from an investment standpoint. It could be from strategics. It could be from VCs. How do those individuals balance each other, relative to strengths and weaknesses to ultimately make the company more successful? And that could be unique for your individual, company. And so it's important to make sure you have the right mix, because those individuals need to work together well, and be synergistic and be able to push each other, and push you, as a founder too. So that's important, mix between what's on the board, who's passive, who's active, et cetera.
So I guess I will take the reframe. It sounds like you really want to work hard at developing those informal advisors, or however it be, to leverage that network as well. Multiple approaches. I think Paul brought up, what's helpful and what's supportive. That's an interesting concept. What about some of the things that you would say, like beyond capital? What are some other skill sets that are beneficial, and when you're making that match for investors, for those venture capital groups, that you think that you could advise founders out there? Like, imagine a founder's listening right now. What could you help them as they're looking right out there in the landscape?
I think one thing most entrepreneurs have not done is sell a company, because most entrepreneurs are first-time entrepreneurs. And one thing that investors do a lot of, if they're good investors, is get their portfolio companies sold. So I think for me, one thing to think about is how would this investor support me and be helpful when we're running a process to be acquired or when we're going public? How many times has that individual done it before? Can I talk to a few of the entrepreneurs who they've helped through that process? And how do they support their portfolio companies when they're raising their next financing round? Those feel like two really valuable things that inherently, as an operator, as an entrepreneur, you just haven't done before. And if you haven't done it before, it's a lot harder to do. So that would be the first thing that comes to mind for me, Michael.
I think the third one that, and agree with those, would be, depending on the experience of the founders or their strength at their network, is, can they tap into, individuals? And I think that leans to, all right, what are other VCs that they've worked with, in the past, and have been successful, and to make those introductions to maybe the next financing, round, or setting those conversations up early for those individuals to start dating, start doing the right diligence, to be able to grow that relationship so they're ready for that next round. Because you don't want to be just introducing to new VCs when you need to be raising. It's actually should be happening much sooner. And the other thing is, is there opportunities from a partnership or business development, standpoint, where they may have, key contacts that their portfolio companies are have established, and that they can use. And I think, sometimes depending on the VC, how are they from a thought leadership perspective? So it goes back to kind of where that puck is going, I think is really important. So how do you start to steer the company to where the industry is headed? So you're not making mistakes or from a product market fit. So you're able to kind of try to be more scientific at meeting the needs as to where the industry is headed.
Excellent, excellent response, Kevin. One other, I want to flip it a little bit. What makes a good entrepreneur? I mean, I think this could be for all of you. How can you be more coachable? It seems like that could be a really important fact to really make things work between the VC and entrepreneur. I guess my question really is, any recommendations out there from you, Gary, or you entrepreneurs, what entrepreneurs can do to be better at being more helpful to the VC, like to make that work, if that makes sense?
I can turn this to answer your question, Michael. I think it's a great question. Right now, as a full-time founder, I'll tell you, if it works to tell you what I'm working on in myself, maybe that's a better way to approach it. So like I can see the deficit. Like, I think most should be a better listener. I'm trying to listen to what they're saying and not, it's like these things are our babies, and we are incubating these ideas and seeing them go out in the world. And as Paul said, I've made a lot of mistakes in several companies, and we'll continue to make them, I'm sure, and learn from them. And it's like, it always feels bad getting attacked or criticized, right? So it's like part of it's like, okay, let's look at this objectively. And when our investors are talking about here's what you should do, or here's what would be helpful, here's some things you should try, so really stepping back and being dispassionate almost, which is hard because as founders we're all passionate. So it's listening, listening and trying to understand that they're looking out for not just their paycheck, but they're believers, right? They're invested in you. They're believers. They're part of the tribe. And it's like listening to the other members of your tribe who have your best intentions at heart, not just financially, but also the disruptive idea that we're going after. That's a big one for me. Is like, I'm like, but I did this already. Why are you yelling at me? Like, oh wait, no, you're not. You're actually saying, here's another way we can approach this problem. And always striving for that maturity level is what I'm trying to do, which is difficult, right? Because like I said, we're really passionate about these ideas that we have. So that's as I get older, I'm just more tired. And it's easier to be a better listener.
Jerry, would you like to respond?
I would. I meet with hundreds of startups, and I think one of the best things that they can provide an investor is a very clear story about their company and how they believe it's going to move through the market. So that's one thing, is just having a very simple story to follow. And then the second thing, once we decide that we want to move on to the next step, digging into their information, going into their data room, and having that data room being very robust and filled with all the information that I need to see, is extremely helpful, right? The more information, the better, because a lot of times we'll come back and we'll ask for more and more and more. So having that initial data in the room and available is very helpful.
Michael, I maybe add one thing. The one single thing for me is that every single CEO should have a CEO coach. And actually only a small percentage of CEOs have CEO coaches. And for people that like data, if you're a CEO and you have a CEO coach, you are 3.5 times more likely to have a successful exit, IPO or M&A. 3.5 times more likely. But yet a very small portion of CEOs have CEO coaches. As you pointed out, Michael, I'm really into sport, especially pickleball, previously other sports. As a competitive sports player, I would always have a coach. And I think CEOs are, the analogy between a CEO and a competitive sports player, I think is pretty strong. And you could not imagine a professional tennis player not having a coach or a number of coaches. But yet we have CEOs who don't have coaches. It's really difficult for me to understand. So get a CEO coach is top tip.
Hey Paul, so I have a big pickleball match tonight in the neighborhood. So maybe you can maybe we can stay on. You can coach me through some tips on this intense matchup that I have. But I agree with that. I also think it's you hear this a lot, but I think it's important, is know your numbers. And it's kind of what Jerry talked about is having a really clean and robust data room. But, you should also be knowing those numbers, during those conversations with your board and with your VC as much as possible. They should not, have to wait a week or two, for those numbers. You should try to know those numbers as much as possible. As well as, for me, I think it's been important to try to be one step ahead, of the board and VCs too, as much as possible. So, and that's really about knowing the industry, knowing what's out there, knowing where things are going, being an avid reader, continuous learning, I think is important. You never know enough, about what's happening out in the market. So continuing to educate yourself around this, that's going to be super helpful, for the board and for the VCs to develop more and more confidence on the direction of the organization. And they're going to have, less of a need to, want to step in and try to control things a little bit further.
How do you know when you have a VC and the entrepreneur going down? How do you balance that where it's the product market fit, the pivot? What data points to align? Can you guys share a little bit about that? You get the Steve Jobs that was known with the reality distortion, and he could make things that would never have been possible. And I know venture capitalists, there's a balance. Sometimes there's that amazing mythical entrepreneur. Is this stuff that we shouldn't even use as reality indicators, or is there some truth to that? And I'm sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent.
Michael, I'd say there definitely is some truth to that. I've met founders in the past who are they've got a certain charisma and something to them that makes you want to follow them. It makes you want to be a part of what they're doing. And so I think there's definitely something to the personality of an entrepreneur that draws an investor in.
I think that's part of the storytelling. What you were talking about, Jerry, is and if you look at Steve Jobs, he did an amazing job telling stories and about why there should be a product market fit, and where things are headed, and why I need to have this device in my hand at all times. So if you're able to tell a compelling story on your product and your vision, you'll be able to get more folks behind this. I also think, part of this is experience of the VCs. If early VCs in their first foray, they may get a little anxious if you're not showing product market fit immediately. But individuals that have tremendous experience, have patience, and they're able to persevere, through the challenges and the bumps, ups and downs of growing a startup. And so I think those are things that you look out for, because they're going to be along with you for the long haul, versus wanting short-term, returns.
Are there any entrepreneurs, as Paul, you've obviously your coach doing a lot of this advising. Do any of you want to share anything that you think could be helpful, whether it be a book, article, founder, venture group that you guys use? I know, Kevin, you alluded to the, continuous learning, improvement, obviously, trying to work on your edge. Anything that you think would be helpful in this context today?
Yeah, one thing, running Daytona, we have several of our clients are actually startup entrepreneurs and founders with varying levels of experience, and completely 1000% agree with what Paul's saying about the coaching. Actually, I'll go farther and say it's not just about, and to Paul's point, it's funny because in the athletic space, we don't really do this in healthcare, do we? But athletes get this. It's the better you are, the more coaching you need, right? In football, you'll actually see a defensive line coach, this coach, a different. So it's weird. Like we think about coaching as a one and done. No, it's a continuous process of leveling up. It's how the athletic world sees it. And we should really see our health and our professional determinants of health like that too. And what we've noticed is it's really hard to separate out the work part, which is like the tip of the iceberg that everyone sees when that entrepreneur is coming into the boardroom or their team rooms. What you're seeing is a very small part of their entire life. The rest of what you're not seeing below the water is how they're dealing with their stress, their sleep the night before, their physical health, their fitness, what they ate, the fight with their wife or their spouse or their partner. They're feeling guilty about leaving the kids behind and not spending enough time. And it's like a holistic way of treating that physical and mental and professional health under one umbrella. We've seen our clients who are founders respond really favorably to that. So it's like if I was a VC, I'd almost say investing in those resources, almost from the VC side, is almost like an insurance policy for your portfolio company leadership. I think that's going to be something that I hope we see more of, and we obviously have seen that's a market that we're going after, but I think there's enough room for a lot of other companies to do that similar thing. So I'm curious about how you guys think about that, but it's so important because we think about this distinction between physical and mental health or our jobs, and there really isn't one. If you're a founder, you're kind of living the entire life. It's one big thing, and getting an executive coach to help with the CEO, the professional development, getting that life coach to help with how to say no to things and priorities and work-life balance, and also keeping your health in order as well, I think is such a key piece. And it's very hard to do that alone. So that's something I've noticed with our clients who are founders, actually.
Which I think, Ravi, maybe ties into something that we've all touched on, which is really over communicating with your board and your investors. And I think was one thing that I didn't do well at the beginning, but I think gradually realized that actually, gosh, the more I communicate with the people around me who are there and energized to help make our company a success, the better they can be in supporting me, providing guidance, providing help. And I think that sometimes as entrepreneurs, we don't communicate enough to our board and investors.
Would you guys like to share a little more on, and from you, Jerry, as well, maybe communication strategies, frequency, what that looks like, how much is enough, how much is too much? It seems like that's a good thing you brought up, Paul, and you started, Ravi. Jerry, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yep. When I think about the communication, it's both internal and external. So I'll just start with internal. Working for a Japanese corporate requires a lot of socializing of investments. And so the communication internally is very intense. Like there's a lot of it going back and forth. We have a lot of stakeholders. We have a lot of individuals that are a part of the investment committee. And so quite a bit of communication flow back and forth internally. Externally, we're also very close to our portfolio companies. We're making these investments from a strategic standpoint. We always want to have a collaboration in place when we make an investment, and we always want to be very close to our portfolio companies. A lot of times we'll have a seat on their board. And so I think what Paul said is really to the point. You've got to be, as far as I'm concerned, to be a good investor, you've got to be very close to your portfolio company and keep that line of communication open at all times.
As we're coming towards the end, is there any takeaways that you would like to share today, any of you?
I think for me, the summary is it's hard founding a company, taking it through the financing stages, finding product market fit, getting to an exit, navigating all of the issues that pop up through that journey. It's hard. So gosh, be sure to surround yourself with investors, board directors, advisors, executive team who ideally have done some part of that before. I think you have such a head start if you have people around you who've been through what you're about to go through in the coming couple of years. I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways for me.
Yeah, I think it is a lonely world out there, starting a company, and being able to lean on individuals that have done it, before, from what Paul was talking about from a coach standpoint, from what Ravi's talking about, making sure your mental health and physical health remains in good standing, which you're able to then be a better person in front of your organization during good times and bad times, probably more importantly during tougher times. And you have to roll with the punches. This is not a sprint, but it's rather, a marathon, and, continued focus, continued dedication. I love to, think about the Atomic Habits book from James Clear, 1% improvement every day. Making sure that you're executing on sprints. And when those sprints start to add up with continued execution over the course of 30, 60, 90 days, you start to look back and you say, wow, I just did a lot. But if you start looking too far forward or too far back on making mistakes, then it's really difficult to continue to, have those execution markers over the course of those 30, 60, 90 days. So I think that's really important of just continued learning, continued execution, fail fast, move forward, and keep grinding, because it's all about grinding. And eventually you get there, but and a lot of luck. Sometimes if it's just the right time, and you timed it right, and that's all luck. Right now is really hard. The markets are difficult. We're resetting, a lot of valuations, and raising capital is a lot harder than what it was 5 years ago. And so it's I wouldn't want it any other way. It's very, very difficult. But it's not for everyone.
Ravi, Jerry?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that you guys have said. The patience part of it, and to your earlier question, Michael, the one thing that's helped me is not only it is lonely, and talking to founders and VCs and people who are operators and also have been on the investment side. Being part of that community, these kind of conversations is very therapeutic. The second thing I would say is there's a whole generation of people who aren't alive anymore who are great founders, and they wrote books, and reading those books have actually been very helpful to me, just to see, and not business books per se, but more like books by the actual founders themselves or autobiographies, and seeing how they dealt with things. That's helpful, because it's like almost like an AA meeting founders, right? It's the great podcast that I've found a lot of value in, about an hour each episode, is called Founders by David Senra. And he if anyone gets, it's on Spotify, obviously. If you get a chance to look at these, and he just kind of talks about, it's like Ritz-Carlton, like how they actually started, or, like FedEx, like, the time when he had to go to Vegas to put everything on, on red to make payroll for that week. Or it's like, Jesus, okay, that was bad. Like it puts our problems in perspective, my problems in perspective with my startup, whatever. So I think finding those links and ties to people who have solved similar problems, even in the past, is really helpful to me. So it doesn't feel so lonely.
Jerry?
Yeah, I'd just like to, to all the entrepreneurs out there, I'd say, find your investor that matches you, right? Not every investor is going to match with every startup. Investors specialize in things, startups specialize in things, and sometimes there's just a matchmaking process. And if you find that match with a good investor or a good startup, I think it can go a long way.
Well, we're coming towards the end. I got some super smart people in the room. We don't want to end too early, but I also don't want to extend this day. Any wrap up takeaways from today before we call it a day? All right. Well, this has been awesome having you join us. And I really do think those who are out there will find this whether you're a venture capitalist or whoever it be, of course, a serial entrepreneur or entrepreneur, you'd really enjoy this. And until next time, friends, thank you.